Designing SMART Goals, Objectives in Lesson Planning, a comprehensive guide. The foundation of high-quality instruction rests not on the activities performed during a lesson, but on the meticulous clarity of the intended outcomes. A learning objective serves as the navigational guide, the ultimate destination, and the criterion by which the journey's success is measured. Without a well-defined objective, instructional activities risk becoming tangential. Assessment becomes subjective, and the learner's path remains opaque. This necessity is universally acknowledged across disciplines, from advanced physics to second language acquisition, SLA. The most effective mechanism for ensuring these outcomes are relevant, rigorous, and accessible is the adoption of the SMART framework: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. This framework transforms vague aspirations into concrete, actionable instructional goals, forming the bedrock of every successful lesson plan. Part 1. The philosophical foundation of learning objectives. The modern emphasis on clearly defined learning objectives is rooted in the principles of backward design, a methodology popularized by Wiggins and McTighe. This approach mandates that the planner begin with the end in mind, determining the desired results, the objectives, then identifying the acceptable evidence of learning, the assessments, and only then designing the instructional experiences, the activities. This foundational philosophy ensures that every minute of classroom time is intentionally dedicated to bridging the gap between current knowledge and the stated objective. Objectives, therefore, are not an afterthought tacked onto a list of activities, but the primary cognitive commitment the educator makes to the learner. They clarify to students what they are expected to know or be able to do, and how well they must do it, thereby placing the responsibility for learning squarely in the hands of the student, while holding the instructor accountable for the design of the learning path. In terms of cognitive psychology, clear objectives address the human need for transparency and focus. When an objective is clearly articulated, verbally, visually, and structurally within the lesson, it helps learners activate relevant prior knowledge, direct their attention toward key concepts, and effectively allocate their cognitive resources. This reduces cognitive load associated with figuring out what the teacher wants and frees up mental energy to focus on the actual process of learning, practicing, and applying the new information. For the expert teacher, the objective acts as a perpetual touchstone, allowing for real-time monitoring of student progress and informing immediate, necessary adjustments to instructional delivery, pacing, or scaffolding. Part 2. Deconstructing the SMART acronym for pedagogical precision. The power of the SMART framework lies in its 5 distinct yet interconnected criteria, each addressing a potential failure point in lesson planning. Achieving excellence requires meticulous attention to each component, ensuring the objective functions effectively as a communication tool, a design guide, and an assessment rubric. S for specific. The specific component addresses what the student will do and under what conditions. A vague objective, such as students will understand poetry, offers no guidance on teaching or assessing. To make it specific, the objective must name the target audience, the students, use a precise, action-oriented verb, and clearly identify the content. This is where linguistic precision, a key skill for the expert teacher, becomes paramount. Verbs must be selected carefully from a taxonomic hierarchy, such as Bloom's, ensuring they denote an observable action rather than an unobservable mental state. For instance, understand is unobservable. Analyze, compare, summarize, or evaluate are observable and specific. An objective is specific when it clearly communicates the who, what, and where of the learning outcome. A strong example would be the students will, in small groups, analyze the main argumentative structures used in 3 different political op-eds. M for measurable. The measurable component dictates how the student will demonstrate mastery and what criteria will be used to evaluate their performance. If an objective is not measurable, it cannot be assessed reliably, and thus, mastery cannot be confirmed. Measurability is achieved by integrating one or more quantifiable metrics into the objective statement. These metrics often address quantity, e.g., list 5 factors, identify 4 types of noun clauses, quality, e.g., with 90% accuracy, according to the 4 criteria on the rubric, or frequency, e.g., in 4 out of 5 trials. The measurable element is the critical link between the objective and the assessment. It transforms a behavioral expectation into a clearly defined, evidence-based performance target. For example, the vague objective, students will write better sentences, becomes measurable as students will construct complex sentences utilizing at least one dependent and one independent clause, achieving a grammatical accuracy rate of 85%. A for achievable. The achievable component, sometimes phrased as attainable or ambitious, ensures that the goal is realistically within the student's reach, given their developmental stage, prior knowledge, and the instructional time allotted. A goal that is too easy lacks rigor, and one that is impossible leads to frustration and disengagement. Achieving this balance requires the teacher to be intimately familiar with the student's zone of proximal development and the necessary scaffolding required to bridge the gap. For a teacher of linguistics, this means ensuring that a goal requiring the comparison of Old English and Middle English is only set after the necessary foundational knowledge of grammatical evolution has been securely established. If the objective is not achievable within the constraints of the lesson, the planner must either adjust the complexity of the verb, move lower on Bloom's taxonomy, or modify the required performance criteria, lower the accuracy threshold. This component is a promise to the student that with effort and instruction, success is a genuine possibility. R for relevant. The relevant component, also referred to as results-oriented or realistic, addresses the why of the learning. Why does this objective matter to the student, the unit, and the overarching curriculum? A goal is relevant when it aligns with district, state, or national standards, contributes logically to a larger unit or course objective, and ideally, connects to the student's real-world context or future academic needs. This relevance provides intrinsic motivation. In language arts, an objective about identifying metaphors might be intrinsically valuable for a test, but it becomes relevant when framed as students will identify 3 metaphors in contemporary political rhetoric to evaluate how figurative language influences public opinion. The objective should clearly reflect a significant rather than trivial learning need, ensuring the investment of time and effort yields meaningful results for the learner's intellectual growth. Key for time-bound. The time-bound component anchors the objective to a specific time frame, providing a crucial sense of urgency and defining the duration of the learning experience. This answers the question, when will this goal be accomplished? In the context of daily lesson planning, the objective is typically time-bound by the end of the class period or the conclusion of the specified activity. For a unit plan, the goal would be time-bound by the end of the unit, usually tied to a summative assessment date. This element compels the teacher to be realistic about pacing and provides both the teacher and the student with a clear deadline for accountability. Without this boundary, the objective lacks the necessary structure to drive focused effort, risking an endless, unstructured learning process. Part 3. The linguistic and cognitive imperative in goal setting. The specialized perspective of the linguist is crucial in refining learning objectives, particularly concerning the strategic selection of language. The primary linguistic decision involves the action verb, which must be meticulously chosen to represent the exact cognitive process being targeted. Using a verb that sits at the application level of Bloom's taxonomy, e.g., demonstrate, construct, solve, requires a fundamentally different instructional and assessment approach than a verb at the synthesis level, e.g., design, formulate, create. Furthermore, the objective serves as a vital piece of cognitive communication. When presented clearly, it forms an implicit contract with the student. If you engage in these activities, you will achieve this outcome, and here is the evidence we will use to prove it. This transparency demystifies the learning process, helping students develop stronger metacognitive skills by explicitly connecting effort, activities to outcome, the objective. Vague or poorly worded objectives create noise, wasting cognitive resources that should be dedicated to engaging with the content itself. A linguistically precise objective, by contrast, acts as a focusing lens. This precision is never more important than when the objective is used to inform the assessment design. The measurable component of the objective must contain all the necessary parameters for the assessment rubric. If the objective states, students will analyze the use of conditional tense with 80% accuracy, the assessment must be designed to isolate and measure the conditional tense and only the conditional tense, generating a numerical score that can validate the 80% accuracy criterion. The objective thus functions as the foundation of assessment validity, ensuring the test measures precisely what was taught and what was intended to be learned. Part 4. Integrating SMART objectives into the lesson planning workflow. Effective lesson planning begins not by listing activities, but by moving from broad curriculum goals down to daily SMART objectives. This integration follows a logical, top-down structure. The process initiates with the unit goal, which is typically broad and covers several weeks of instruction, e.g., students will demonstrate proficiency in narrative writing techniques. This is then broken down into daily objectives, which are the true SMART goals. A single unit goal may generate 5 to 10 distinct SMART objectives, each targeting a specific subskill necessary for the final proficiency. For example, one day might focus on the objective. Students will accurately identify and explain 3 types of narrative hooks, specificity, in a written response graded according to a checklist, measurability, during a 20-minute timed assignment, time-bound, contributing to the unit's final story draft, relevance, following the provided mentor text analysis, achievability. In practice, educators must remain vigilant against several common pitfalls. The most frequent error is the selection of vague verbs, know, grasp, be familiar with, which must be replaced by observable actions. Another common issue is unattainable goals, where the objective is too ambitious for the time or developmental level. This requires adjusting the achievable component. Finally, a lack of clear metrics, the absence of quality or quantity criteria, renders the goal immeasurable and the assessment unreliable. By rigorously filtering all proposed objectives through the 5 SMART checkpoints, teachers ensure that every lesson is structurally sound, educationally relevant, and demonstrably effective. Designing learning objectives using the SMART framework is the most vital step in the pedagogical process, serving as the definitive link between curriculum theory and classroom reality. It is a process that demands intellectual rigor, linguistic precision, and deep developmental awareness. By meticulously defining goals as specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, the expert teacher crafts a transparent, focused, and effective learning experience. The resulting SMART objective acts as the singular, unwavering point of reference for instructional design, student motivation, and the validation of learning, ultimately transforming the lesson plan from a simple itinerary into a powerful, accountable, and successful educational strategy.